Awesome, thank you. And with that too, if you don't want your name shown, you can change your name as well. If you hover over your image, you can click on the three little dots there and it'll give you a option to change your name as well. So you're more than welcome to do that. We're happy to see your face, but understand if you don't want that as well. So today we're going to be talking about affordable housing in the community, some of the things that we're seeing, some of the trends, where they're heading, and we're going to touch on how that impacts the community and specifically Pillars clients as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share our presentation for today. Bear with me here. I'm Matt Malm. I'm the Community Engagement Director here at Pillars. I'll be facilitating a little bit of the conversation today, but we do have two guest speakers. We're going to do a quick poll. I always like to see kind of who we have in the space. We get a lot of volunteers, donors, supporters, partner agencies. So it's always interesting to see kind of how that fluctuates. If you're a co-host, you might not be able to see it. It looks like everybody can, so got some of that rolling in. Lots of volunteers today. That's great to see. A lot of board members, community members. Awesome. It looks like most everybody has answered now, so thank you so much. It looks like we've got a lot of community members here, a lot of community partners, board members, some donors and volunteers too. So certainly great to see so many different people coming together. All right. So we will jump right in and we're going to be talking about the state of housing in the Fox Cities. Today we have Tara, who is our Supportive Services Director here at Pillars. She's been working with Pillars and our legacy agencies for 12 years now. She reminded me today that she technically started at the emergency shelter of the Fox Cities, even though her time there was just about a month or so before transitioning to partnership of the Fox Cities, and then when we merged into Pillars as well. So certainly Tara is an expert in her field and our expert here in Pillars, and we're happy to have her presenting with us today. And then we have Ryan Lodel from the city of Appleton. Ryan is the community development specialist and coordinated entry specialist. He'll tell you a little bit more about what that means as well and how we look at that as a community. Ryan also used to work at Pillars, so we're happy to have his expertise in the field and that background as well. So I'm actually going to hand things off to Tara. She might have to duck out a little bit early, but we should be able to get through her portion of the slides before that. So Tara, you should have control.
Okay. Good morning, and thanks for joining us today. So like Matt said, I'm the Supportive Services Director with Pillars, which means I oversee our case management team that's providing case management across all of our sites, including everywhere from outreach, diversion, housing, shelter, and then we have some support services as well that aid in ensuring people are connected to the right resources and we're communicating our message well. So been here, I'm still going with September of 2010 when I was with Emergency Shelter of the Fox Valley. And overlapped for a few months and had been with them for 7 months and then overlapped and ended up with Housing Partnership, the legacy agency. So have a little bit of knowledge on this. I also sit with the Wisconsin Balance of State Continuum of Care. So on a statewide level, this information resonates true as well as far as maybe some of the challenges and some of the programs that are out there. So looking into the presentation, I am not controlling it. So let me see what's going on. There we go. Okay. So let me just make sure. Okay. So This slide is compliments of Karen Harkness, who was with the city of Appleton. There was a study a while back and a plan that had been discussed with the city of Appleton to identify kind of what we would need realistically as a community to be able to keep up with the need of housing in Appleton. What was learned during that study was that we're very much underproducing units currently, and there's a really high demand for new units. So physically, we don't actually have the space for all of the people that live here, is virtually what that means. So the new construction needs to be about 301 units per year to really keep up with the demand and what we need in Appleton. There's also another website, I believe it's through NPR, where you can actually put in your community and it will show you how many units you are short. And currently, just as this shares, we are about 3,000 units short, and probably many, many more of actual affordable housing to keep up with that demand. Because housing in general, we're out with physical space, but affordable housing, we need even more. There have been a handful of developments and projects that have gone up in the city of Appleton in the past few years. So it's kind of a tough slide to see, but virtually it does identify some of those new projects, those new residential projects that we've seen put in place in the last few years, including the Gabriel Furniture Development, Crescent Lofts, and the units that are going up by Park Central, or what was once Park Central. So it has been an increase in units downtown. The challenges are that they're not all affordable. Many of those are very high market rate, and they don't necessarily meet the needs of the population that we serve here at Pillars, who need affordable housing. Crescent Lofts does. They've been a fantastic partner. They've been working with us now since they've opened, and we've been able to refer folks there to ensure that we can get folks housed that are moving into some of our housing programs. I just wanted to call kind of special attention to that. In this chart, you'll see those that really what it takes and what we need to be able to support housing in our community. And obviously, you know, some of these wages, as you look at them, they're rather low. And folks aren't making what's considered a livable wage to really be able to support the need for housing at a market rate level. Now, if they're receiving some sort of support or some sort of subsidy, that of course, it makes it more likely, but then we run into challenges with landlords, maybe potentially not accepting those subsidies. So this really does share what folks are making in our community and how that resonates. HUD has shared that realistically for housing to be affordable, it needs to be 30% of somebody's income for all housing expenses. That would include not just their rent, but realistically their utilities as well. So when you look at some of these earners, some of them that aren't earning as much, if we look at, you know, our childcare workers, they, in theory, I'm going to do some real quick math, which is not my strong suit. In theory, would need to find a unit that's $523 a month that has everything included in it. That is not what we're seeing in our community. We've seen rents skyrocket, and of course, cost of living in general, including utilities, has also increased. So $523 for childcare workers that are taking care of our children to be able to secure housing is kind of unfortunate to hear that that's what we're facing. And of course, they're not exempt. They're not the only ones, as we can see. There's many others that have to find housing within a range that realistically should be affordable for them, so they can afford all of their other basic needs. This shows kind of the general units that what will be supplied or what is looking at from a housing development standpoint. And most of those units are unlikely to be supplied by the market anytime soon, is what this is kind of sharing. And so it shows what we need. It shows kind of the price point that we would need to hit. And then of course our gap that we have. And if we think about, you know, 650 or a unit that's under $650, that would include any unit size. And if anybody has looked at any sort of rentals recently, 650 and a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, or honestly, even a 2-bedroom is very unrealistic. Fair market rent on a 2-bedroom is over $900, I believe, right now. And over 3-bedroom is well over $1,000. And so to think that we need 650 units that still have the size bedrooms for the families that might need them, is where we run into some challenges within our community, and that we're not supplying, aside from not having the physical space, we're still not supplying really what we need. So what is happening within our community agencies? We had done a study. This is a little, we had done a study with a handful of landlords in our community a few years ago, and had asked, what are the barriers that folks are seeing with their applicants that's making them high barrier, that's making landlords and property managers second guess why they may want to rent to somebody, and maybe just some of those standard background pieces that landlords are checking in on. And this was what we had learned. These are the general reasons why somebody is considered low barrier or high barrier. And of course, former evictions, criminal history, and then owing past landlords money, or utilities being some of those highest reasons why a client is, or a tenant is less likely to be rented to, along with low to no income, kind of trailing pretty close behind. Within the community, we do operate a coalition. It's the Fox Cities Housing Coalition. It's been in effect for many years. This is an entity that is kind of required so we can bring an additional funding into our program. All of our federal funds require membership into our state continuum of care, and the coalition does hold a seat or hold membership with that. The mission of the Fox Cities Coalition, beyond being able to bring in funds for our community for housing, is to ensure that all people in the Fox Cities have decent and affordable housing. Truly, it's a group of folks, aside from bringing those federal dollars in, that want to get together and discuss challenges and really troubleshoot how we can best address the needs that we have in our community for housing and homelessness. This visual, to me, is one of the best ways to look at what a successful coalition has, in terms of the people and the providers and the partners that are sitting around that table, or figuratively virtual table, every other month, since that's how we meet. But it really talks about the variety of services from a housing standpoint that needs to be there, and really the variety of communities that are within that, you know, that are going to be a part of this and also support. So it's just a kind of a snapshot of what a coalition typically has. And I will say our Fox Cities Housing Coalition does have everybody on that list as a partner that comes to the table and connects every month. It's about 30 member agencies and many other allies and friends who join the meetings on a regular basis. The group meets once a month, like I said, to discuss challenges related with housing and homelessness, including having some standing committees that really look at some creative solutions and how to move forward on some of the challenges that we see and we experience within the community. What we do have available within the Fox Cities. So I'm just gonna run through the differently, not just Appleton, but Fox Cities, meaning Northern Winnebago. Okay, I just want to do a quick check. I got a thing that said I'm not getting any yeses or nos, so it's making me, uh-oh, did I freeze? I froze?
For a little bit, but you're back, Tara.
I'm back, okay.
Yes.
I had one of those, internet is unstable. I hope it was a really flattering picture. We always know that everybody loves to be on freeze frames in Zoom, right? So So as I was saying, these are the variety of programming that we have available in our community as far as assistance goes. The first up to bat is kind of our emergency rental assistance programming. Salvation Army, Pillars, Levin, we all provide kind of that short-term 1 to 3 months light case management, or maybe even just services navigation that is associated with this type of programming. It's not intensive. And the intention is typically for those who are at risk of being homelessness or who are precariously housed. And maybe they're doubled up, maybe they're staying with friends or family. Perhaps they're staring at a notice that they received from their landlord. They might even be staying in a hotel, but that's typically that population that's receiving these services. And then assistance is usually provided based on need, not necessarily based on income, or maybe based on kind of just a flat rate. It's typically a kind of an assessment of the family and what they need, or there is a flat rate that's allowed through this type of assistance. Then we have our time limited rental assistance, which looks like medium term, maybe 12 to 24 months, depending on the need of the family. There's usually some moderate to intensive case management that comes along with it. This looks like transitional shelter, words like rapid rehousing, tenant-based rental assistance that maybe don't always mean a lot to people who aren't doing this every day. But that is the type of programming that you would hear typically associated with the 12 to 24 month kind of medium-term assistance. Assistance is usually based on 30% of somebody's household income. That's a little bit different than our emergency assistance, where it might be a flat rate or it might be based on need. The bottom shows those that are participating in these types of programs, which includes COT, AdvoCap, Pillars, and the Salvation Army. Pillars, AdvoCap, and Salvation Army actually has multiple partnerships with the city of Appleton, where we work together for funding within our community on programming such as rapid rehousing. And then tenant-based rental assistance, there's a partnership with Appleton Housing Authority where they administer the grant, but we provide the services. Permanent supportive rental assistance is long-term, meaning that we have no time frame, so permanent in its name. Although it is permanent and there is no time frame, the intention is that folks will move out once they no longer need the supportive side of things. We don't want to backlog, we don't want to fill everything up forever, and we know that eventually folks work through some of their barriers and become more interdependent with their community and stabilize, and are able to move on beyond the supportive side of what is needed within this program and really secure just the permanent affordable side of housing, which really comes up next on the next slide. So long-term, very intensive case management. Typically, this is for folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness and have a disability. There's 2 different types of programming we can do, which I'm not going to get into the weeds on that because I can get very weedy and it would probably just create confusion. We have one program realistically as a permanent supportive housing program in our community, and that is It Takes a Village. We do have an on-site 6-unit permanent supportive project as well, where we partner with the Fox Valley Veterans Council. We do not work through a system where we would have those who are experiencing chronic homelessness, though. It would be prioritized for our veterans. So there's realistically 2. This program is really for those though that are most intensive, have really high barriers, folks that could use quite a bit of case management as they work through and start to stabilize. This assistance is also based on 30% of a household's income. And then we have our rental subsidies, which many people hear through a variety of ways, like Section 8, housing choice vouchers, emergency housing vouchers. There's public housing, Section 42, and even population-specific housing. This is usually 30% of folks' income as well, but there's no time limit, and there's really no support services that are intentionally offered or required as a part of this program. The most common one I would say being like Section 8 housing choice vouchers. That's administered by the Appleton Housing Authority in our community. So these are the folks that also participate in that type of programming that are listed throughout this slide. This is a while services aren't required as usually contingency on it, they are offered. So we have some really fantastic programs and support folks in our community who are offering additional assistance to help folks stabilize as they are accessing these resources. So like a shout out to our self-sufficiency program with Appleton Housing Authority. It's a phenomenal program. And folks that are working with Appleton Housing Authority are able to participate in it. It has worked wonders for many people that have been able to make it through that program. So I think they might even have an event coming up. So I'm just going to put a quick plug for them to keep your eyes out on that, because they usually do a self-sufficiency graduation, and it's really inspiring to see how hard people have worked through that program. Outagamie County also has some supports in place for people in terms of being able to get kind of that like case management as they're receiving services. So next up, before I click too far ahead, I'll hand it off to Ryan. He is with the City of Appleton, and he can introduce himself a little bit more, but he will talk about our coordinated entry system that we use for many of these programs.
All right. Thank you, Tara. I appreciate setting all the context for this. So again, I'm Ryan Lodel. I am serving in two roles with the city currently. First is a community development specialist. So as Tara mentioned, the partner, lead agency for the Fox Cities Housing Coalition with a lot of that grant funding that's received. The city itself does not offer, manage, operate any housing or housing programs. However, we do serve as that lead agency. So ultimately, we're submitting the applications to the state or federal government for funding, and then the city serves as a fiduciary agent. So the money comes through the city, and then we ensure compliance, and then ultimately manage those dollars. And then additionally, serving as a coordinated entry specialist, which is a homeless management system throughout the state of Wisconsin. Actually covers 69 of the 72 counties in the state of Wisconsin. And it's really a system that's meant to take those individuals and families experiencing homelessness and connect them to those supportive housing programs. So as Tara mentioned, the rapid rehousing, the tenant-based rental assistance, permanent supportive housing programs, they utilize coordinated entry to fill their programs. So we'll get a little bit more into that, just high level. There we go, all over the place. So coordinated entry. So as Tara mentioned, kind of those programs, they're really trying to serve specific populations. So really what we're looking at is in the coordinated entry system, it really consists of an assessment, and then it takes into account several other factors. So primarily how long somebody's been homeless, if they meet the definition of chronic homelessness, which means they've been homeless for at least 12 consecutive months or 4 times over the past 3 years, that accumulates to 12 months. It also takes into account if somebody is a veteran, if there's a disability in the household, how long somebody has physically been on that coordinated entry list. And again, I'll provide a little bit more data after this. So really kind of falls into these tiers of low barrier, kind of mid barrier, and then high barrier. So again, that higher barrier usually is that permanent supportive housing, or really sometimes the intensive rapid rehousing programs with the intensive case management. That mid-level, again, tenant-based rental assistance, and then the lower barrier programs like Pillars single room occupancy, or some of their on-site, maybe more subsidized programming that's owned and operated by Pillars or Advocate for Salvation Army, one of those agency-owned units. So really it's meant to take those people that fall and try to connect them to appropriate programming that can help meet their needs. So next, what I have here is just kind of a look at our coordinated entry list for the Fox cities. This data is as of yesterday. So it is fresh. There is, so the way that this works, and you'll see Clarity, non-HMIS, probably doesn't mean much to a lot of people on this call. So Clarity is a statewide database. So it's a homeless management system. As I mentioned, it is encompassing all counties in the state of Wisconsin. I do know Milwaukee and Dane and Racine counties kind of operate their own. Tara mentioned the Wisconsin Balance of State. That's 69 of the 72 counties. Milwaukee, Dane, and Racine kind of run their own, but they are also operating within that system. So there's clarity within these lists, and there should be, I think I sent with some like white text, so I'm guessing that's why it's not showing up in the corner here. But there is really two lists. There is a household with children and a household without children. So really that's how they break it down. And then you'll also see non-HMIS. That's primarily used by our domestic violence provider. So in the Fox Cities here, that's Harbor House, Christine Ann, or also anybody that does not wish to be put into that state database. So again, as of yesterday, this list here is for the households without children. It's currently showing that there's 195 individuals on our list. That's up from 185 individuals when I ran this data last month for the Housing Coalition. And then our non-HMIS list is showing 42 individuals, again, up from 37 last month, for a total of 237 individuals. That should be up from last month where it was 222. And the average length on that list is about 111 days. I will say that number is slightly skewed. There's a few people on that list that have been on there pushing almost 2 years. So again, we try and working to keep that information as updated as possible. When a referral is made for an individual or family to coordinated entry, from there, whoever made that referral, so usually that case manager, myself, we then follow up with that household every 30 days to make sure that they're still in need of housing and to make sure their information is as up to date as possible, so that with these lists, it is a prioritization list. It's not a waiting list. So really, as I mentioned, between that assessment score, how long somebody's been homeless, it's a fluid list. That list is changing daily. I always give the example of, I could go into one of Pillar's shelters today. I get assessed. I get an assessment score, months homeless. I am on that list. The next day, for example, Tara comes in and she scores higher than me. She has more months homeless. Even though I was assessed first, her needs, her barriers would exceed mine, and she would then slot above me on that list. So it really is a list that's geared to take the highest need, highest barriers, individuals and families, and connect them to the supportive housing programs in this community. So next is that households with children. So our Clarity statewide database is showing 57 households, 208 individuals. That's down from last month with 61 households, 220 individuals. And then the non-HMIS list is showing 52 households, 181 individuals. That's up from 44 households, 157 individuals, again, last month. So a total of 109 households, 389 individuals, up from 105 households, 377 individuals, with that average length of stay on that list being just shy of 94 days, up from a little over 88 days last month. There is something I did want to point out on this. I'm just going to go back to the previous slide. What you can see is, so this is just kind of mapping, as you see the chart below, kind of per month as I'm pulling these for the Housing Coalition monthly updates, kind of our trends for this year. But the last one here, you can actually see at the bottom is actually for 2020. So you can see, again, for this month, we had a total of 237, 195 and 42. At the same time last year, we were at 157 and 28. So again, pretty significant increases in the needs for these housing programs, more people accessing the statewide system, getting access to services, and then being referred to this list. And then again, just going back to the households with children, you can see the increase. So 57 and 52 was last year, 49 and 41. And I will say, early 22, our numbers were in the mid to low 20s on both lists. So I will say, from what I am seeing, the increase in need for services for families and families accessing shelter and the need for homeless and housing services, I've seen, I'd say the families have really been where we've seen a significant increase. And then this is, again, missing the title up in the corner. So again, I will make sure I do better on that next time. But this is Pillars Prevention and Diversion Program. So again, a program that's meant to serve those that are in need of housing and services before they truly become homeless. So it's really meant to keep them out of a homeless episode, out of having to enter the homeless system. So we had 105, or we have 105 referrals. Family households, we were at 48, 163 individuals. The individual household is 57 households. And again, you can see this is one where the same time last year, significant increase in the need for these services. So we had 48 and 57, and then this same time last year, we were at 26 and 26. So those numbers, essentially doubled in both categories. So next, I want to point out when somebody prioritizes through the coordinated entry system, they are offered a housing opportunity. That doesn't necessarily mean that there is a housing unit readily available for them, but between efforts by that individual or family and efforts by their case manager, they are working together to try to find housing, enter programming, and then the subsidy would begin in those additional supportive services, as Tara mentioned. So in 2021, we had a total of 99 housing referrals. Of those, 30 were successful and 69 were unsuccessful. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and that's what will kind of dictate kind of what unsuccessful referrals. So 23 of those referrals were unable to lease, or their voucher expired. So they accepted programming, they were issued a voucher, and then given either 60 to 90 days to find a housing unit, and they just were not able to obtain housing during that housing search and placement time is what we refer to in that. 21, again, came to the top of the list, prioritized, and that agency tried to contact that household, individual or family, and they were unable to establish contact. The rules that we use for that are established by the balance of state indicate that there needs to be 3 separate attempts to contact the household, separated by 24 hours. At that point, if contact's not able to be established, they would then ask for the next person on the prioritization list. 7 actually declined the opportunity. In most cases, what this is since it is a statewide database, individuals and families can be referred to other coalitions. So sometimes this is somebody that prioritizes in the Fox cities, but they're located physically currently at the time of prioritization in the western part of the state or the southern part of the state, and they just do not have the means to get here and enter programming. So they say that they'll decline the opportunity to relocate to the Fox cities. 6 found housing without the need for programming. So either in that housing search and placement component, or by the time they prioritize, they've already found other housing. They did not need services due to housing already being obtained. 5 were not homeless at the time of housing. So for these programs, you need to be either category 1 or category 4 homeless as defined by HUD. Category 1 homeless is that you are residing in a place not meant for human habitation. So that means outside in a vehicle, just an abandoned building, someplace that no person should be living, that you're either in an emergency shelter or on an emergency motel voucher program, or that you're in a safe haven, which really doesn't apply to us. I believe there's one, I think, in the La Crosse area or on the western part of the state. That doesn't really apply to us. Or category 4 homeless, which means you are actively fleeing domestic violence. So at the time that they prioritized, they were contacted and they did not meet category 1 or category 4 homeless. So they would remain on the list or be removed from the list based on that living situation. 4 were incarcerated or in a treatment facility. 2 were not eligible. I believe that was they prioritized for a permanent supportive housing program. That's for singles only or households without children. And I believe they had children when they were placed on the wrong list. And then 1 actually at the time, which was a good thing, had just obtained new employment and was over income for the program. So that was 2021. Here's 2022, and I just wrapped this up. So we had significantly more referrals. There was 178 compared to 99 from 2021. And of those, we had a 15% success rate. So half of the success from the previous year. So of those 178, 27 successfully found housing compared to 151 not finding housing. Similar to the slides for 21, here's the reasons that they were unsuccessful. So 62, if you remember from 21, the large one was that they were issued housing, could not find it. What we had on this one was we were just unable to contact people. So again, those attempts to follow up, it's also when doing a coordinated entry referral, we make it very clear to that individual that, you know, if your contact information changes, please don't hesitate to reach out and to, you know, change that contact information. Because I can tell you that is probably one of the worst feelings is when somebody has been on the list for 30, 60, 90, 120 days. They get to the top of the list, they prioritize, and we can't contact them. So that is the one that I hate the most. Next after that is, again, the top one from 21 is unable to lease or the voucher expired. So again, they were accepted programming, they were issued a voucher, they went out and did housing search along with their case manager. And again, just were not able to find an available unit or somebody that was willing to accept assistance, somebody that was willing to work with them. This one we had 20, yes.
Just for 1 second, I just want to draw attention to the differences between last year and this year. Like Brian said, it was half. That's a really significant amount. And we've been feeling that within our organizations of not being able to find units that are either that are going to meet all the requirements of it, landlords that are going to accept the tenants that we're working with, or even just that the unit itself meets eligibility factors like the rent is low enough and fits within a certain means. And so this has been a trend nationally as well in terms of having challenges with landlords accepting programming, not just our programming at Pillars, but the programming also that we see even with housing choice vouchers. So that is what we've seen on kind of a statewide trend. And granted, we do have some really fantastic landlords that we work with. I think one's actually on this call, and she's amazing. But you know, there's so many more that we are still in need, obviously, because we had 40 folks that could have been housed last year, but were unable to because they simply couldn't find a unit that was willing to work with them. So it's a huge increase, and we can see the actual data trends supporting that. So I just want to make sure I draw attention to that, especially as we look at those previous slides and the need for units that are at a lower rate and you know, the lack of space that we have available within the community in general. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just laying out the data, and any context you want to provide, don't hesitate to jump in. Also, another significant increase that we saw last year was that those that declined opportunity. I will say this is a testament to the abundance of services that we provide between, as Tara mentioned on those slides, so the rapid rehousing, the tenant-based rental assistance, the permanent supportive housing. We just get a lot of referrals from other coalitions. Primarily, there's a lot of flowing between the Brown County Coalition, which kind of Green Bay area, and then the Winnebago land, which is kind of south of Neenah and Menasha. They refer to the Fox cities a lot. I know we also refer out to them, so it's not a one-way street, but a large majority of those were declined prioritizations from Brown County. I would say of those 24, I want to say it is at least 15 plus of those they prioritized, they're currently located in Brown County, prioritized for a housing opportunity down here. And then when they realized they had to physically relocate to the Fox cities, they declined the opportunity. So again, that was one significantly, and again, Brown County being the primary contributor to that. 10, again, where either in the process of accepting housing or by the time they prioritized had already found housing. 7, incarcerated in treatment facility. 5, again, not homeless. 1, not eligible. As I mentioned, the permanent supportive housing program, where again, somehow a family got on the list. 1 over income, and then 1, unfortunately, prioritized. And in the process of that housing search, they passed away. So point in time, the city, as well as the coordinated entry, serve as a lead for point in time. If you're not aware of what point in time is a physical street count of our unsheltered, sheltered, and those in some housing programs. So it's a real live snapshot count of the homeless situation in our respective communities. So it's done twice a year. There's a winter and then a summer. So it's usually the 4th, and here's a plug for the upcoming point in time count. That's going to be, I guess now it's June next month, end of next month. So plug for that. But it is that the 4th Wednesday, it's required by HUD, and it's done nationwide. So every coalition, as Tara mentioned, the 21 coalitions in the state of Wisconsin, as well as any other coalitions in the United States, are required by HUD to do this. So again, we map out, I want to say we had between 40 and 50 volunteers, 10 different teams, 10 different routes, and we spread out throughout the Fox cities. It usually starts around 11 o'clock p.m. That Wednesday, and then goes to about 3-4 o'clock in the morning into Thursday. And then there's what's called a service count. So that's where we get on this chart, you can see the sheltered. That's where we get those numbers as well. So it does take into account anybody active in one of our shelters. So as you can see, we had July of 22. We found 40 unsheltered people last summer, 192 in shelter. We had some motel vouchers out there. We didn't have anybody active that night. Still a program that's being utilized. And then you'll see a little blip here on our housing programs. They were on for they stopped in 2017 and then kind of came on again in 2022. And they are again off for 2023. So if you were looking at, I can't remember, Tara, if you put the chart on here, nope. So if you saw my chart, it kind of blips for 2022. That was, Tara, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was a little bit before my time. There was transitional housing, which in the Fox cities was Pillars, I believe AdvoCap, Salvation Army. That got renamed to Rapid Rehousing, as Tara mentioned. So you can see for a while there was nothing. And then in 2022, COTS, who provides transitional housing, at one of these presentations kind of said, hey, we want our data included in our coalition to give a better accurate depiction of, really the services that are being provided. They were in the system, so the HMIS statewide database, for about a year. And then when it came time to renew their contract, they kind of said, hey, we don't necessarily see the benefit to this. So again, that's kind of where they reappeared online is that was COTS. So again, if you are interested, I'm sure there'll be plenty of information that will be sent out. Fox Cities Housing Coalition blog, there'll be information on there. I will say sign up happens very quick. So usually we are filled up pretty fast, but if that's something you're interested in, please do not reach out to myself or Tara. We'd be happy to work around and make sure you get a spot. Because if you've not gone through a point in time count, it truly is a great experience to really to be on the street, to be out there with, there's usually a team lead. So, it's not, you're going out by yourself. You're in a team, usually with somebody that's done this several times and experienced. So it really gives you that accurate depiction of what homelessness looks like here in the Fox cities.
And I'm going to just pause because I did see a question asking about if, looking at the data from previous years, if about 30 people is where we can, is about how many folks that we house in a given year. Are you referring to the slides, the previous slides with coordinated entry? I just want to make sure I'm okay. If you want to go back to the coordinated entry slides. So this is actually who was leased up throughout our whole coalition. So this includes anybody pulled in for Salvation Army programming, Pillars, and AdvoCap, who all work within coordinated entry. So that is 30 for the year for all of our organizations that were successful. And then on the next slide, 27 that were successful for all of our organizations. Yeah. So that is pretty telling. And if you want to even move forward back to that point in time slide, Ryan, as we can see, our numbers are increasing. So in looking at sheltered, it doesn't seem like it deviates too much, other than, of course, the COVID year where we had some pretty significant decrease in shelter because of social distancing. But really looking at this particular slide on the unsheltered side, I mean, it has increased tenfold. And that is also what we are seeing statewide and even nationally in terms of unsheltered homelessness increasing. So when we talk about the people that were housed, that's actually our full community we were able to secure for. And then we talk about those who are unsheltered, that has been increasing along with our length of stays within our shelters. So we may be serving at the same rate, but we're serving the same people for longer. I will say that we have seen kind of in a trend standpoint.
And I apologize, Matt, I think I exited out of full screen. I was trying to reference another number. I was just going to try to get the January numbers, but I realize I can't do that when I'm controlling your screen. So I was just trying to get some additional context, because again, I know there's a lot of data that can be compiled from our system. There's a lot of great reports. But again, yeah, the big thing being, and also Tara can attest to this too, prioritizations really depend on the turnover in programs. So I know some of those programs, as she mentioned, it's 12 to 24 months. So sometimes there's a big, for me, sometimes it's months I get 20, 25, 30 prioritization requests from agencies, and some months I get 1 or 2. So it really depends on how frequent they're turning over or how frequent they have program openings. So.
And point in time is taking place, I think, July 26th. It's usually the last Wednesday of the month. And like Brian said, it's usually from about 11 to 2, 3, kind of depending on when the teams come back. So everybody breaks into teams. They canvass our full service area. There's predetermined routes, predetermined teams with a leader that goes out and connects with folks, literally staying where they're at. Put your information in the chat and I will add you to the list when we start soliciting for volunteers.
Yep, absolutely. And again, shout out to Salvation. It's held, we operate a Salvation Army too. So they've done that for the past several years. And they also do serve as a temporary overnight shelter. So people that are found during the point in time count can head back to Salvation Army. There's usually coffee, something to eat, and then they can kind of sleep there that night to kind of get out of the elements. So that's been a great addition that we've been able to have. We had it for a while, then COVID happened, and then I think last summer was the first time we were able to do that again. So shout out to Salvation Army too for serving that purpose that night. So I think conclusions, is that back to you, Tara?
Sure. So, I mean, ultimately, the big needs in our community is we need to address housing shortages with a long-term strategy that includes short-term goals. How can we replenish our stock of units? How can we work to forge more partnerships to ensure that, there's more than 27 or 30 people being housed that are being pulled into programs? Because when we have, that many people who are being offered housing, but so many that are unable to secure, we need to have more partners to be able to do that. Preventing the loss of affordable housing and increasing affordable rental housing. When we talk about preventing the loss, a trend that we've seen more recently is larger rental companies purchasing units that, maybe smaller landlords previously had. They're rehabbing them, and then they are increasing the rents on them, and some just completely not serving folks anymore that are receiving some sort of subsidy. We had lost, I think it was at least 7 units this past year to that exact situation where landlords were purchasing a property, turning it over, increasing rents, and exiting those that were receiving our services. That was a huge hit, and that's really hard to replenish when we know that there's so many units that aren't going to be eligible in general. So that has been a huge trend that we have seen throughout our community. And I can speak for, I think, Winnebago Land as well, and having previous conversations with them and saying that they have also seen that trend. So really preserving that is super important. And then really removing barriers to home ownership as well. Because if folks aren't moving into home ownership, then we're just going to be full in rental housing and kind of backlogged there. And there's going to be a huge gap for folks not being able to then enter those units. I had learned just heard recently, didn't really think about it at a conference I was at, how many of the new constructions that are going up, aside from housing constructions that are, developments for apartments that are on the higher end, but even the housing that's going up, the actual homes for home ownership that are going up, are higher priced. They're not middle class homes. And many folks, another thing that was pointed out by our grant specialist, another trend that's out there, is that many people who are downsizing, maybe downsizing to some of those units that, previously those could have moved out of apartments and into kind of starter homes. Now those starter homes are becoming kind of end games or retirement homes for many folks. And so with all of those trends kind of at play, there's just not a lot of movement and we're really stuck within the community. And so we need more strategies, and we need to reduce barriers for people accessing those services as well. So folks that are in really, really high need, we're not looking at ways to disqualify them for services, but looking for a way to include them in services. And that speaks to our mental health system, substance use. It speaks to a variety of systems out there that are in play to ensure that people are receiving services and not being excluded from services. So really looking at reducing barriers to entry. So those are kind of the big things that are out there. Are there other questions that people have? Okay.
Alana, has there been anything in the chat worth bringing up?
We only had one question so far and Tara addressed it, so we should be good so far.
Okay. Yeah, I know that this is a lot of information to take in, and just to bring a little bit more of a Pillars perspective on it. We own and operate 40 properties across the community, consisting of 136 units. So certainly, that's a large chunk of affordable housing in our community. And, we talked a lot about the programming that people can get into as rental support, where they pay 30% of their income and the rest is kind of a subsidy through one of these programs. But there's a lot of restrictions and criteria that come along with that funding, and it makes it really difficult, not only for one individual or a family to find the right program, but to find a house that fits all of those requirements too. So not all of Pillars housing units have people in them that are in one of those programs. So that allows us a lot more flexibility as the landlord to kind of move people into units depending on what their program is or what their program isn't. So we do serve some people that aren't in one of those subsidy programs, and we kind of act as that rental assistance where we still only charge 30% of their rent, of their income, but Pillars actually absorbs the other the remainder of that rent. So in a given year, Pillars actually absorbs about $610,000 in rent, where we're able to provide that assistance without filling that. So certainly, as ways to support, we're always looking to grow our housing inventory, and specifically units that don't have restrictions tied to the unit, because that kind of bottlenecks things as well. But I did have a question for either Ryan or Tara. As we see the numbers growing on the coordinated entry list, how much can we attribute to additional people that are seeking service opposed to the kind of bottleneck in throughput? So how much of it is less people moving through and finding shelter and kind of creating that backup, opposed to more people on the list?
Tara, do you want to take that? Or do you want me to take that?
Well, I mean, your numbers had shared that there has been an increase of folks actually on the list, in the last couple of years, but I do think throughput has been a huge challenge, and that we aren't able to successfully lease people up. So then people are staying in shelters longer, they may remain on the list. And so I think it's probably a little twofold, in that the throughput isn't moving quickly or as smoothly or swiftly as we'd like it to, for people to be leased up and be able to take advantage of these programs. But there has been an increase, and that's again, that's a national trend that we've seen as I sit in on calls statewide and again, nationally, we're seeing a lot of these exact same trends throughout. So.
And I would say, if anybody, I don't know, a couple of you on this call were at the city's homeless summit yesterday, and we had Carrie Poser, who is the executive director of the Wisconsin Balanced Estate, come. And if you liked my data, hers was way better than mine. But she was kind of, tying to the trend that, yeah, there is this Fox Cities had a rather low number comparative to our neighboring communities and the rest of the state in first-time homelessness. So in her depiction, it really is a lot of people that we're continuing to see kind of bottlenecking in the system. I mean, I think Pillar staff on here could probably attest there's several people in shelter that I think you'd be shocked to know their level of income. It's just they cannot, for whatever reason, a background issue, eviction history, poor credit, things like that, yeah, they could absolutely afford a fair market rent unit, right? They could afford to pay that, but due to some of the background issues, they just can't find somebody that's willing to work with them. So, when you have a low vacancy rate, I believe the Outagamie County housing study showed that we had somewhere between 3% and 4% vacancy rate. A good fluid market usually is between 6% to 8%. So we're on the rather low end of just having available units. And, when you can have a unit where you have 20 plus applicants, right, you can be picky, and that's to no fault of a property owner or a landlord. That's just the reality of it. So it truly is a shortage of units. I did see one question pop up. No, unfortunately, the homeless summit was not recorded yesterday. I know there will be kind of a summary that's shared from that should come out today. And also the slides and Carrie's presentation will be made available, but that was not recorded, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. And once we get that information, we can always send that out as well. So if you're on this call today, we can pull that list and make sure you get that information too. Tara, Ryan, thank you so much for contributing. Everybody who joined today, thank you so much for coming out. These conversations are really important to have. I think one of the big takeaways for me today was kind of seeing all of those different service providers listed on the bottom of Tara's slides. There's a lot of agencies, a lot of great agencies and great people doing work, but there's still more to be done, and we can all use a little help. I did want to take just a quick moment to plug our current campaign. If you're interested in other ways to support, we currently have a $50,000 match going on through July 4th. So that campaign is starting today. You can give online, you can mail in a check, mail in cash. If you have questions about other ways to give or ways to support, you're more than welcome to give us a call. You can give me a call, give Alana a call. We'll throw some information in the chat too, but I just can't thank everyone enough for being here today, and keep looking out for other ways to get involved. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.